Nope. Just a second.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Hello. Thank you for those of you who are joining us live on Facebook. I'm going to apologize up front for my voice. I've been having a little bit of the respiratory thing lately. So this is the first week of April, of course, and I want to start the press conference by acknowledging that April is Child Abuse Prevention Month. As most of you know, I spent my career advocating for abuse victims, specifically children, and am all too familiar with the marks that abuse leaves behind on a young life. And frankly, those marks last well into adulthood, if not for the rest of that person's life. Child abuse, of course, can be committed in many different ways: physical, emotional, sexual, and psychological are some of the common ones we see, as well as neglect. Some abuse, though, comes in the form of failing to protect, because it is a parent's duty to protect their child from harm. We are seeing an explosion of addiction issues related specifically to fentanyl, and it's not uncommon for drug-addicted parents or drug-dealing parents to fail to protect their children by allowing dangerous drugs such as fentanyl to be ingested, touched, or played with because of the parents' reckless behavior due to their addiction. These actions can result in criminal charges being brought forward. One recent example is the case of Tammy Lou Adams, who is currently serving a sentence in prison because of her leaving fentanyl within the reach of her 22-month-old child. That child died. We have other open cases against parents who have been reckless in their use of drugs, whose parents have died or nearly died, who are also facing charges. Just to give you some perspective on the numbers, in Maricopa County, we receive roughly 450 referrals for child abuse by this office every year, involving requests to bring charges, criminal charges, against an adult abuser. 450, and yet one is too many. So I am a very strong believer in preventing the abuse. The best crime is the one that never happens, and breaking the cycle of violence, which is why I am heavily involved with Child Help USA. I'm actually the chair of their Arizona Advisory Board, and so I keep up to date on all of the issues surrounding child abuse. Excuse me again. And I support their efforts in the prevention and treatment of child abuse. So we reached out to Child Help to get some statistics to share with you. This week, Child Help shared that 40% of reports of abuse in Arizona are for children under the age of 2 years old. Those who are exposed to violence are certainly more likely to experience failure in school, depression, and substance abuse. According to the Institute of Justice, abused children have an increased risk of committing crimes as adults. They also have an increased risk of suffering physical ailments as adults. And that's why prevention of abuse is key. And it leads me to this message. If you are aware that a child is or has been the victim of abuse, physical, sexual, neglect, psychological, report it to the jurisdiction, the police jurisdiction that has jurisdiction over that area, or report it to DCS. Reporting abuse provides opportunities to intervene so that the abuse does not continue, and that strategies can be used to help that child recover from the abuse that has been inflicted. There is a mandatory reporting law in Arizona that requires people who have responsibility for the care, treatment, or oversight of a child, such as school personnel, parents, to report, but the law allows anyone to report. So it's not a must report or can't report. It is a must report or may report. And the statute, if you want to look it up, is ARS 133620. And with that, I'm going to open it up to any questions that you have.
Can you just clarify that 450
Can you
number?
use a microphone, please?
Yeah, it's really hard to hear you.
Could you say again what the 450 was, just so I get it? Like, what were the, how do you code that? Or
Sure.
Okay.
In Maricopa County, we receive approximately 450 referrals, meaning submittals from law enforcement requesting child abuse charges every year against an adult abuser. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for giving us the time to ask some questions. Mine are focused on the Preston Thorne murder investigation. And I had a couple. I don't know if it's best for me to ask one at a time or just ask them as I have them here. First, I was hoping that you could provide an explanation on what felony murder means. And if you could also explain why the kidnapping charge was so important in this case.
Okay. So under Arizona law, there are two ways to commit first-degree murder. The first way is by premeditatedly killing somebody. So you reflect on it, you make the decision to intentionally kill someone. That's premeditated murder. The other way is through the felony murder theory. What that is during the commission of certain serious offenses, such as kidnapping, the death of somebody occurs. So the kidnapping is a part and parcel of the felony murder charge. So somebody died during the commission of a kidnapping. Now, I think a lot of people, because when they see TV and they hear about kidnapping, they're thinking somebody who is grabbed and maybe tied up or transported. That's really not what is required for kidnapping under Arizona law. Under Arizona law, what's required is restraint. And so, for example, putting somebody in a situation where they cannot get away would constitute restraint under the kidnapping charge.
And following up on that, as we've recently obtained the police report, I know we don't have all of the evidence and the facts in that report, but it's new information to us. Taking a look at where Queen Creek police were at in mid-December, it looked like they were planning to submit charges for review of second-degree murder, aggravated assault, and robbery. And not all of the 7 who have now since been charged with first-degree murder were listed. Can you explain what changed in the role that your office played in kind of sorting that out and figuring out who can be charged with what?
Okay, you're right. So ultimately, 7 people, some juveniles, some adults, were charged with attempted felony murder or second-degree murder in the alternative. A handful were charged also with aggravated robbery. They were also all charged with kidnapping. Originally, the submittal that we received from Queen Creek on December 29th recommended charges related to the homicide, I'll say, for 5 individuals. But as you know, I was able to announce it later on, but not at the time it was happening. We started up an investigative grand jury, and we were able to develop additional information that allowed us to charge not 5 individuals with that, but 7 individuals with that. The other 2 individuals that charges were recommended on by Queen Creek were not directly related to the homicide, and those are still under review.
That was going to be my next question. The chief.
See how good I am? I knew you were going there.
Yeah. The chief has said in the past couple of days that he did recommend charges against the 2 homeowners who hosted the party that Preston Lord and the attackers were allegedly at before the deadly assault. Can you provide an update on where that investigation stands and I guess what charges someone could potentially face in a situation like that?
The charges, without going into a lot of detail on that, were recommended by Queen Creek were misdemeanor charges. Obviously, our priority is going to be the felony charges, and so that's why we pursued those initially. So the misdemeanor charges are still under review. So we're still looking at those.
Last question I have is if you're able to provide any update on the status of if these 7 have been cooperating with your prosecutors, and if any plea deals have been extended or if you plan to extend any plea deals?
I do not talk about any sort of plea offers or negotiations in active cases, so I'm not going to do that. But what I would say about this case is we're at a very early stage in this case, in all 7 cases. Mm-hmm.
Hi, Bowen over Stoles, KTR News. A question from the newsroom. We know there was a second party the night of the Preston Lord attack where there were also calls coming out related to concerns of violence, and I was curious if there's any indication that the 7 suspects were at that party before or after the attack, or just being at the party Preston Lord was present at?
I don't want to mislead you on that. I know that there was some movement from some certain people from one party to the other, but I don't want to specifically say it was the charged suspect, so we can look into that for you.
Thank you.
But there was movement. We are aware of that.
And a second question not related to this. I'm just curious if you'd like to comment. The Phoenix subcommittee in the Phoenix City Council recently moved forward a ban on urban camping near schools and homeless shelters, and it's already inundated with conversations of legal worries. I was curious if you had just an initial reaction to something like that being implemented.
I'd have to kind of research the specifics of what the ban was to see what the concerns are related to, I assume, constitutionality issues. But I do applaud the Phoenix City Council for attempting to address the issue. Obviously, it is of great concern.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kelsey Blazier with ABC 15. I was just hoping you could clarify the theory of first-degree murder a little more. I thought kidnapping was very clear, but I'm still a little lost on first-degree murder and the theory.
Okay. So first-degree murder, there's the premeditated version of it, and then there's a felony version of it. So if somebody dies during the commission of a felony, and it can't be just any felony, it has to be certain enumerated felonies, then that person the people involved in that can be held responsible and charged with felony murder, which is first-degree murder. Is that okay?
That helps, thank you.
Okay.
Unless anyone has other questions. Okay, I have
Okay.
other questions
Okay.
related to that. Okay, so I'm gonna start from our newsroom. Related to the Palm Valley case, Goodyear police are recommending to MCAO charges of sexual assault and unlawful imprisonment against a former employee of the Palm Valley Post-Acute in Goodyear. Do you know what the status is of that?
The status is that it is currently under review. It's been assigned to a prosecutor and who is going through the materials.
Okay. And then, different case now.
Okay.
So Jake Kelly, I think you're aware of the case.
Yes.
Have you requested if Phoenix Police will continue to look into Jake Kelly's case and Corey Young's role in the death of Jake Kelly?
No case, the way we operate with the police is no case is just handed off and the involvement ends. And so if additional information comes in related to the role of Mr. Young, certainly they're welcome to present it to us as my attorneys work their way through prosecuting the case and discovery. If they become aware of additional information that needs to be followed up on, we can either ask Phoenix to do that or we can do it with our own investigations division.
Can you tell me why Mr. Young was not charged with second-degree murder?
Well, I will tell you that it was only submitted for hindering prosecution, which is what we charged. And I don't want to go, because it's an active case, I don't want to go into too many details, but that was what the police recommended.
Okay, so if the Phoenix Police Department were to further investigate, could they submit charges?
Phoenix can always submit additional information that either results in just additional information or additional charges. They're free to do that.
Do you think anything needs to be done more to investigate this case?
There may be things that come up during our preparation of the case for trial. And if that happens, the attorneys will communicate that to the police.
Okay, and my last one.
Okay.
Crystal Wilson, last week the case was dismissed. In the motion filed by prosecutors, they said new information was learned throughout preparation of this case. Quote, the parties have become aware of previous information that makes this dismissal of interest. of justice, end quote. Can you tell me what that new information was and how it contributed to the dismissal?
Yes, there were several things that were considered. So let me circle back with you on that, but it was staffed with me. There were some things, and talking to the police about it too, where they were in agreement that this case at this point needed to not go forward. And so we did dismiss it. I was in agreement with that. But it involved witness issues, as well as some other factual issues that were brought up that put things in a different light. And that's as far as I'll go on that.
Okay. Our reporters are hearing that the family is concerned that they won't get justice. So do you have a message for the family?
You know, my heart goes out to them. I mean, this is a horrible situation. And, you know, unfortunately, we are bound by the evidence that we have, but that doesn't mean that we won't keep trying to get additional information and to hold people accountable that need to be held accountable. But I understand it's terrible.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh.
County Attorney, you've spoken in the past about an uptick in youth violence involving guns.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wonder if you could share with us any statistics you might have to, I guess, back up that.
Sure. I mean, in addition to just what we're observing within this office, did pull some stats. So, for example, the number of juveniles charged with first-degree murder, comparing between 2022 and 2023, is 3 times higher. It's actually over 3 times higher. Juvenile violent crime is up, not only in Maricopa County, but also statewide and also nationally. I've looked at some statistics myself that were provided by the Administrative Office of the Courts, and a lot of this violence is pertaining to use of guns, not all of it, but a lot of it. And what I saw in looking at the stats is pretty much any crime involving a juvenile and a gun, comparing 2023 or 2022, it may have been, to 2017, was up significantly, both statewide and countywide.
But it is, if you compare it to, like, say, the mid-90s, that's when the violence really peaked, crime overall, and including youth violence. So if you look at the chart for that for the FBI, it's like a mountain, you know, and it goes straight down. So I guess what I'm saying is it's all relative if you're comparing it to the year prior or 2 years prior versus comparing, the overall trend is downward.
Well, in terms of trends, what I saw from the Administrative Office of the Courts was that, yes, crime was higher in, say, 2017 prior to COVID, but, and it did take a dip during the COVID years, but it is on its way back up. What I would say is, if I'm the person that's being shot, I don't really care, relatively speaking, what the trends are. I care that I was shot, and we're seeing those numbers go back up, and that is of concern to me.
And another question, a little off topic. The folks that are organizing the abortion ballot measure say they have enough signatures to put it on the ballot. Since you're running for election this year, or re-election, would you support that ballot measure?
I have to look at the more details of it, but my understanding is that it is very, very broad. And based on that, you know, as a county attorney, my role is to uphold the law, and I'm going to uphold the law, whatever the people or the legislature and governor decide it to be. My personal opinion is something completely different.
But you're probably going to be asked if you support a woman's right to choose.
I very well may, but as county attorney, my role is to enforce the law. And so my answer is that whatever that law is, I will be enforcing the law. Right now, the law allows abortions up to 15 weeks. I know that there's a pending legal case to decide if another law controls. That hasn't been decided yet, and then now we have this other possibility. So My role as county attorney is to uphold the law.
Okay, thank you.
Hi.
Hi, this is Angel from Telemundo. I have a question for you. Katie Hobbs approved minimum prison sentences for fentanyl traffickers yesterday, and I wanna take the chance to ask you, what do you think about that? Fentanyl is destroying our communities and pretty serious. So also, if you have some numbers that you can share to us regarding how it's affecting the communities, will be really appreciated.
Well, I mean, yeah, I applaud anything that cracks down on people that are bringing that poison into our community. The numbers I know are these that are just staggering. So, in talking to representatives of the DEA, we know that in 2022 and 2023, over half of the fentanyl that they seized in the United States was seized in Arizona. That means we are around zero for fentanyl entering our country. I've also seen, just in the 2 years I've been in office, the estimates that 6 in 10 pills contain a potentially lethal dose go from 6 to 7. So now we're talking 70% of pills contain a potentially lethal dose. I just talked 10 minutes ago about a woman who's now gone to prison because her addiction was so severe that she did not protect her child who got a hold of fentanyl, and now we have a dead 22-month-old child. I have seen cases where people are so caught up in their addiction that they actually have used the tray on a baby's high chair to cut their drugs. And we know what a small amount of that drug can kill a little kid that would use a high chair. We know that overdose deaths have increased from 2015 to now to, I think, between 5,000 and 6,000%. And the trend is going from other drugs to going to very much dominantly fentanyl. I've talked about the fentanyl forums that our office does to educate parents and youth and teachers. And, we did one out at a high school in the not too far out, East Valley, and had 3 families show up who had lost young people to fentanyl overdoses. So, I mean, it is ravaging our community. We've seen the result. We see people walking around that clearly have ingested fentanyl or some other type of drug. We know that the cartel is involving our young people in going over the border and smuggling it back over here, and it's affecting their lives for the rest of their lives. It is devastating. And so anything that can be done to curb that and hold people accountable, I applaud.
Attorney General Chris Mays, she mentioned a couple days ago about the possibility, she was concerned about some scanners in the border that have not been used to try to stop how they, transport fentanyl. Do you have any comments on that as well at the federal level, of course?
Well, I've talked with the Attorney General about this. I mean, we're both concerned because a lot of the fentanyl, some of it's coming over through, smuggling routes, shall we say, but a lot of it's coming over through the normal entry ports as well. And so we have to do a better job at catching it. There are some scanners. My understanding is that there is an enhanced ability to detect it. And I think what Attorney General Mays was talking about had to do with making sure that those are provided and online and used. So if they are effective in that, we need to do it.
Thank you.
Hi, one more question from the newsroom. There's been reporting on concerns about how a case involving the former Arizona Prisons Chief, Charles Ryan, was dealt with, and essentially that he's avoiding jail time. Would you like to respond to how that was handled?
Wow. I've responded for a couple of years about that. The bottom line is we look at every case individually here. That was no exception. That was actually staffed under my predecessor and then restaffed when I took over. The facts of the case did not fit the standard for filing aggravated assault. We did charge him with 2 felonies. He was facing a range of sentence, and the judge imposed the sentence that he did after hearing all of the facts. And, you know, people who are out there opining on this case without having watched all the body cams and read all of the police reports and listened to the interviews are doing just that. They're opining.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, one more. Officer Boswell, who was shot this weekend at 35th Avenue in Southern.
Yeah.
We were told you might be able to respond to what charges may be coming after the 3 accused participated in the shooting.
Yeah, I think it's too early for me to give you the specifics of what charges those 3 will be facing. But obviously, we take this very seriously. I have reached out to Officer Boswell, and I have assured him that we, support the police in this office and that we will work very hard to make sure that justice is received in this case and that they're held accountable for what they did. So we've been working with the Phoenix Police on this since day one, and we'll continue to do so.
One of the suspects was an adult and 2 were juveniles.
Correct.
Do you have any information about whether or not they had any prior criminal history?
I haven't looked at the actual printout, but from what I'm told, it was not. There was not a significant criminal history, I guess is the best way to say it.
And I know juveniles, typically names are not released, but would we be learning those names at any point?
It's very possible, yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Done?
Anybody else?
Okey-doke.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you. Cassie, would you